over fields of green, remembering the faces, the moments unseen, the hands that built a dynasty, the vision in their eyes, echoes in the auction barn beneath an endless sky. This is the bullvine, turn the volume high, for the icons of the ages that never will die. From the show ring thunder to the quiet strength they knew, hear their stories now, coming right on through.
Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, where dairy history comes alive. I'm your host, and today we're bringing you something special, a story that spans continents, defies conventional wisdom, and proves that sometimes the greatest genetic revolutions start with what everyone else calls a defect. This is the three-legged bull, the untold story of how one calf changed the color of an entire breed. For the next hour, you're going to step into the boots of the visionaries, the risk-takers, and the believers who saw potential where others saw only problems. You'll stand in a crowded sale barn in 1972 and watch a man bet his career on a $60,000 gamble. You'll travel from the green valleys of Switzerland to the showgrounds of Paris, and you'll witness the birth of a genetic legacy that touches virtually every red and white Holstein walking the earth today. This is the story of Hanover-Hill Triple Threat-Red. Whether you're milking 100 head or managing thousands, whether you've been in this business for decades or you're just getting started, this story has something for you. Because at its heart, it's about seeing value where others see none. It's about patience, it's about persistence, and it's about the kind of stubborn belief that changes industries. So settle in, pour yourself a coffee, and let's go back to a time when red on a Holstein wasn't an asset. It was a liability. Let's begin.
You feel it before you see it. That electric charge in the air. The kind of tension that only builds when serious money is about to change hands. It's the fall of 1972. Hanover-Hill Holsteins, Port Crane, New York. And you're standing in a sale barn packed shoulder to shoulder with some of the most powerful names in dairy cattle breeding. The concrete floor is cold beneath your boots. The smell of hay and cattle and too many bodies in too small a space fills your nose. And everywhere you look, you see faces you recognize from the pages of Horde's Dairyman and Holstein World. This is Hanover-Hill, the breeding establishment managed by the legendary R. Peter Heffering, the epicenter, the place where fortunes are made and breed history is written. Already today, Tara Hill's Pride Lucky Barb, an EX94 cow, and the dam of the red calf about to enter the ring, has sold for an astonishing $122,000, a world record. And now something else is different. You can feel it in the way people are leaning forward, in the hushed conversations that stop mid-sentence when the next lot number is called. In the ring stands a 6-month-old calf, vibrant red coat, good on his feet, alert eyes taking in the crowd with an intelligence that seems almost unsettling for an animal so young. And by every measure of conventional wisdom you've absorbed over 20 years in this business, you know exactly what you're looking at. A genetic liability. See, for as long as you can remember, red and white on a Holstein hasn't been just unfashionable. It's been treated as a defect, something you cull, something that bars an animal from the prestigious main herd book, something the industry elite, the very people packed into this barn right now, have systematically bred against for generations. So why is everyone holding their breath? The bidding starts, and immediately something unusual happens. The numbers climb past 10,000, past 20, past 30. Your palms are sweating. This doesn't make sense. This is a red calf. A red calf should be selling for a fraction of this, $40,000. You watch a man near the front. You'll learn his name is Ken Young from American Breeders Service's dairy cattle breeding staff, and you see him raise his paddle again. There's something in his face. Determination, maybe desperation. You don't know it yet, but his boss, Dr. Robert Walton, authorized him to bid up to a certain limit, a limit he's about to shatter, $50,000, $55,000, $60,000. The gavel falls, world record for a red and white Holstein, And in that moment, standing in that crowded barn, watching a man who just bet his career on a red calf everyone else called a defect, you're witnessing something you don't fully understand yet. The trajectory of an entire breed is pivoting on its axis. When Dr. Walton demands an explanation for exceeding his authorization, Young will offer a reply that will echo through the halls of dairy breeding lore for the next 50 years. It was easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. Theme begins, something that suggests epic scope, generational legacy. That calf was Hanover-Hill Triple Threat-Red, and this is his story. To understand what happened in that sale barn, you've got to understand the world that existed before. The rules, the prejudices, the ironclad consensus that made a $60,000 red calf seem not just unlikely, but impossible. Let's go back. It's 1955. You're a young dairy farmer, maybe second generation, working a 100-head operation somewhere in the Northeast. You know Holsteins. You've known them your whole life. Black and white cattle, productive and profitable, the backbone of the American dairy industry. And then one morning, you walk into your barn and find something unexpected. A calf born overnight to one of your best cows. Good conformation, strong legs, but instead of the familiar black and white pattern, this calf is red. Your stomach drops. You know what this means. You've heard the old-timers talk about it. Somewhere in your herd's genetics, hidden for generations, the red factor gene has been lurking. And now, it's expressed itself in the worst possible way. Because in 1955, and for decades before and after, red isn't just unfashionable, it's a disqualification. The Maine Holstein herd book won't accept this calf, no matter how good her conformation, no matter how strong her dam's production records. That red coat marks her as defective, unmarketable to the elite breeding programs that drive the industry forward. You have two choices. Raise her as a commercial animal, knowing she'll never contribute to the genetic progress of the breed, or cull her now and move on. Most farmers choose the second option. And here's the thing you need to understand. The thing that made the red and white prejudice so insidious. It wasn't just superstition. It wasn't just aesthetic preference. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Think about it. For most of the 20th century, the absolute best genetics in the Holstein world, the highest producing cows, the most prepotent sires, the animals that would shape the breed for generations, were all being developed exclusively in black and white programs. When a red calf was born, it was pushed to the margins, denied access to the elite bloodlines that were driving improvement. So naturally, red and white cattle fell behind. They produced less milk, they showed less type, they looked inferior, because they were inferior, not by any fault of their own genetics, but because they'd been systematically starved of the same opportunities their black and white siblings received. It was a vicious cycle. Red cattle needed access to elite genetics to improve, but elite genetics wanted nothing to do with red cattle. By the 1960s, red and white Holsteins existed on the absolute fringes of the dairy world, maintained by a handful of dedicated enthusiasts, largely ignored by the mainstream breeding industry. Dismissed as a genetic curiosity at best, a genetic defect at worst. And if you were a red Holstein breeder in those years, if you were one of those stubborn few who loved that red coat and refused to give up on it, you faced a question that kept you awake at night. How do you improve a population when the very best bloodlines refuse to acknowledge you exist? The answer, it turned out, wouldn't come from the heartland of North American dairying. It wouldn't come from Wisconsin or California or the great dairy belts of the Midwest. It would come from an unexpected place. The green valleys of Switzerland. You're a young man in your 20s. It's 1968, and you've just graduated from Agricultural University in Switzerland with a degree and a mission that would seem absurd to most American breeders. Find the world's best red genetics. Bring them back to Europe. Your name is Jean-Louis Schrago, and you're about to spend the next 4 years proving that everyone who dismissed you was wrong. See, you understand something that the North American breeding establishment doesn't fully appreciate yet. Across Europe, in Switzerland, France, Germany, Holland, there's a growing market for red cattle. Traditional breeds like the Simmental and the German Red Pied have dominated for centuries. But they're dual-purpose animals, bred for both milk and meat. And as dairy operations modernize, farmers are looking for something different. They want specialized dairy cattle, high production, modern type. And many of them, for reasons of tradition, consumer preference, or simple aesthetic choice, want those cattle to be red. The opportunity is enormous. The problem is supply. Europe's traditional red breeds don't have the genetic architecture for high-production dairying, and North America's elite Holstein genetics, the bloodlines that could transform European dairy farming, are locked behind a wall of black and white prejudice. But you've heard rumors. Stories about North American Holsteins that carry the red gene hidden in their pedigrees, animals that look black and white but could produce red offspring if mated correctly. So you board a plane to North America, and you begin the search that will consume the next several years of your life. Your search leads you to a place that makes your heart race just looking at it. Hanover-Hill Holsteins, Port Crane, New York. Arguably the most prestigious breeding establishment in the Holstein world. The farm sprawls before you, immaculate barns, manicured pastures, cattle that look like they stepped out of a show ring catalog. This is where legends are made, where cows sell for prices that would buy entire farms back home in Switzerland. And this is where you're about to make the most audacious proposal of your young career. The manager is R. Peter Heffering, a businessman, a pragmatist, a man who has built Hanover-Hill into a global brand by understanding markets and meeting demand. You've studied his operation, you know what he values, but you also know something else. Hanover-Hill's legendary cow family, the Barbs, descended from the incomparable John's Lucky Barb EX97, carries a hidden secret. Somewhere in that bloodline lurks the red factor gene, passed silently from generation to generation, never expressed, but present. You walk into Heffering's office, you shake his hand, and then you make your pitch. Breed your finest cow, the great John's Lucky Barb herself, to a red factor bull. Create something the industry has never seen, a red calf carrying the genetic wealth of Holstein royalty. Heffering listens, his face is unreadable. And then he gives you an answer that lands like a punch to the gut. There's no red and white market. He's not unkind about it. He's not even wrong from his perspective. In 1968, the North American market for red genetics is microscopic. Why would the manager of the most successful Holstein operation in the world divert resources to produce animals he can't sell? You leave Hanover-Hill that day with nothing but a handshake and a polite rejection. Most people would accept that answer. Most people would move on, find another avenue, adjust their expectations to match reality. But you're not most people. You've seen the future. You've calculated the European demand. You know, with a certainty that borders on obsession, that the genetics locked inside those Hanover-Hill barns could transform an entire continent's dairy industry. All you need is patience. And a plan. You fly back to Switzerland, but you don't give up. You keep working, keep building relationships, keep waiting for the moment when the market catches up with your vision. That moment will come in 1971. 3 years have passed. It's 1971, and you're standing in a hotel lobby in upstate New York, surrounded by a delegation of European farmers you've personally assembled for this trip. This is your proof of concept. You're walking, talking evidence that the market Peter Heffering dismissed in 1968 has grown into something he can't ignore. You've spent 3 years cultivating these relationships. Swiss farmers, German buyers, French breeding cooperatives, men who represent thousands of cows and millions of dollars in potential genetics purchases, men who are specifically, explicitly looking for red genetics with modern dairy type. And now you're going back to Hanover-Hill. The reception is different this time. Heffering sees the delegation. He understands what it represents. 3 years ago, you were a young Swiss graduate with a dream. Today, you're a conduit to an entire continent of buyers. Over lunch, the conversation turns to genetics, to possibilities, to the question that's been burning in your mind for 3 years. And then Heffering asks the words you've been waiting to hear. All right then, who would you recommend? This is the moment. The culmination of 3 years of planning, relationship building, and strategic patience. And you have an answer ready. An answer so specific, so unconventional, that it will change the course of breed history. Roybrook Telstar. Even Heffering's eyes widened slightly. Telstar is a titan of the Canadian breed, a superstar celebrated for transmitting refinement, dairy character, and exceptional udders with silky texture. His daughters are legendary, show ring prima donnas, with the kind of type that commands premium prices worldwide. But here's what most North American breeders don't know. What you've discovered through years of pedigree research and quiet conversations with Canadian geneticists. Telstar carries a rare genetic variant, a peculiar trait that's been largely overlooked because it so rarely expresses itself in black and white populations. The black-red gene. It's different from the true recessive red gene that most breeders know about. The black-red gene, sometimes called Telstar red, causes something unusual. Red-born animals that progressively darken as they mature, eventually appearing almost black, a chameleon effect that's confused breeders for years. And you know that the Barb family, John's lucky Barb, her daughters, her granddaughters, carries the other red gene, the true recessive. If you combine them, if you mate Telstar to a Barb daughter, you could create something the breed has never seen. A red calf that carries both genetic variants, an animal that can reliably produce red offspring while transmitting the elite type and production of Holstein royalty. But there's a problem. A logistical nightmare that would stop most breeders in their tracks. Telstar isn't in North America anymore. In 1967, Japanese buyers paid a record price to export him to Japan. His semen is on the other side of the Pacific Ocean, and the cost of importing it back will be astronomical. You make the calls, you work the contacts, and eventually, you locate 2 precious units of Telstar semen available for purchase in Japan. The price? $2,500 for 2 units. In 1971, that's more than many farmers earn in a month. It's an absurd amount of money for frozen semen from a bull that most people have already forgotten about. You tell Heffering it's a deal, and then you make one more recommendation. One more stroke of strategic genius that will prove crucial to everything that follows. Rather than using the aging John's lucky Barb herself, the legendary EX97 matriarch who founded the family, you advise Heffering to use her greatest daughter, Tara Hill's Pride Lucky Barb EX94, a formidable cow in her prime, sired by the strength and longevity specialist Elbank Admiral Ormsby Pride, a cow who carries the true recessive red gene. The genetic math is elegant. Telstar contributes the rare black-red gene. The dam contributes the true recessive red. Together, you're creating something unprecedented, an elite red calf carrying the accumulated genetic wealth of 2 of the most powerful bloodlines in Holstein history. Heffering agrees. The semen is imported from Japan, the mating is made, and then you wait. April 24th, 1972. Spring in upstate New York. The kind of morning when the air still carries a chill, but the sun promises warmth. When the pastures are greening up and the worst of winter feels like a distant memory. In a calving pen at Hanover-Hill Holsteins, Tara Hill's Pride Lucky Barb is in labor. You're not there. You're hundreds of miles away in Wisconsin, where you've been working to convince American Breeders' Service of the potential for red genetics, building relationships, selling a vision, waiting for news from New York. The phone call comes early, and when you hear the words, you feel something shift inside your chest. 4 years of planning, 4 years of patience, 4 years of being told there's no market, no future, no point. It's a bull calf. And he's red. You don't wait, you don't sleep, you get in your car and drive. Hours of highway stretching ahead of you, the radio playing songs you don't really hear, your mind racing through calculations and possibilities, and the sheer improbability of what you've helped create. When you finally arrive at Hanover-Hill, when you walk into that barn and see the calf for the first time, you find yourself struggling to speak. He's small, delicate. His coat is a vibrant red that seems to glow in the barn light, and his eyes, alert, intelligent, taking in everything around him with a focus that seems almost unsettling for an animal so young. His eyes seem to look right through you. You'll describe him later as looking like a small deer. Delicate, alert, unmistakably special. But you know something that the people standing around you don't fully appreciate yet. This isn't just a pretty calf. This is a genetic revolution wrapped in a red coat. The first elite Holstein ever born that can reliably produce red offspring while transmitting the type and production of the breed's most celebrated bloodlines. He doesn't look like a liability. He looks like the future. Before we return to that sale barn in the fall of 1972, you need to understand the world that this calf was about to enter. The high-stakes, high-dollar business of elite cattle genetics. By 1972, the artificial insemination industry had transformed dairy farming from a local enterprise into a global genetic marketplace. Companies like American Breeders' Service, where Ken Young worked under Dr. Robert Walton, had built international networks for collecting, freezing, and distributing semen from elite sires to farms around the world. Think about what that meant. A single exceptional bull, housed at a collection facility in Wisconsin or New York, could sire tens of thousands of daughters across dozens of countries. His genetic influence could spread faster and further than any natural breeding program could ever achieve. The economics were staggering. A proven sire with exceptional daughter performance might generate millions of dollars in semen sales over his productive lifetime. The companies that controlled these bulls, ABS, Cemex, Select Sires, wielded enormous influence over the genetic direction of entire breeds. And the competition for elite genetics was fierce. When a truly exceptional animal appeared, a calf with the pedigree, the conformation, the potential to reshape the breed, the major AI companies would battle for acquisition rights. Sale prices climbed into territory that would have seemed absurd just a decade earlier. But here's what you need to understand about that market in 1972. It was almost entirely focused on black and white genetics. The major AI companies had built their catalogs, their customer relationships, their entire business models around the assumption that Holstein meant black and white. Red genetics? A niche market at best. A curiosity. Something that might interest a few European buyers, but nothing that would move the needle for a major American genetics company. So when the Hanover-Hill sale catalog landed on desks at ABS headquarters in DeForest, Wisconsin, announcing that a red Telstar son from the Barb family would be offered for public sale, the initial reaction was probably skepticism. A red calf. From elite bloodlines, sure, but red. What could something like that possibly be worth? Ken Young, however, saw something different. For months, Jean-Louis Schrago had been lobbying ABS to invest in red genetics, pointing to the European demand that was growing every year. And when Young looked at that pedigree, Telstar on the Barb family, he saw not just a calf, but a strategic opportunity. He requested authorization from Dr. Robert Walton to bid on the calf, and Walton, after some discussion, gave him a number, a ceiling, a rational defensible limit based on the known market value of red genetics. That number was nowhere close to $60,000. It's the day of the sale, fall 1972. And you can feel the tension building before the first lot even enters the ring. The Hanover-Hill sale is always an event, but this year feels different. Word has spread about the red calf, the Telstar son out of Pride Lucky Barb. Breeders have traveled from across the country to see him. European buyers, many of them contacts that Jean-Louis Schrago has been cultivating for years, are scattered throughout the crowd. You find a spot near the ring. Around you, the who's who of the Holstein world is assembled. You recognize faces from magazines, from conventions, from the elite shows where breed history is written, one champion at a time. And somewhere in that crowd, Ken Young of American Breeders' Service is doing math in his head, running calculations, weighing the potential value of a genetic revolution against the very real limits of his authorization from Dr. Walton. The sale begins. Lot after lot enters the ring. The prices are strong. This is Hanover-Hill, after all. But nothing extraordinary. The crowd is waiting. You can feel them waiting. Everyone knows what's coming. Then comes the moment that proves the dam's value. Tara Hill's Pride Lucky Barb, the red calf's mother, classified EX94, enters the ring. The bidding is fierce. When the gavel falls, she's sold for $122,000, a world record for a Holstein cow. The crowd buzzes with excitement, but they're still waiting, because the next lot is the one everyone came to see. And then the red calf enters the ring. He's 6 months old now, still vibrant red, though if you look closely, you might notice the color seems somehow richer, deeper than it was at birth. He walks with confidence, good on his feet, alert eyes scanning the crowd like he knows exactly what's at stake. The auctioneer begins his chant, and immediately something unusual happens. Multiple paddles go up. Not one or two cautious bidders testing the waters. Multiple, from different corners of the barn. $10,000, 15, 20. You're watching Ken Young now. You see him raise his paddle, see the determination in his face, and you see something else, something that looks almost like fear, because the number is climbing, fast, faster than anyone expected, faster than any red calf has ever sold in the history of the breed. 30,000, 35. You don't know it yet, but Young has already blown past his authorization from Dr. Walton. He's in territory that his boss never approved, territory that could cost him his job if this bet doesn't pay off. 40,000, and still he keeps bidding. 45, 50. The crowd is buzzing now. People are standing, craning their necks. This isn't just a sale anymore. This is history being made. This is the moment when everything the industry believed about red genetics is being challenged by cold, hard cash. 55,000, $60,000. The gavel falls. Ken Young has just paid more for a red and white Holstein than anyone has ever paid for a red and white Holstein, by a margin so large that the previous record seems almost quaint by comparison. And somewhere in DeForest, Wisconsin, phones are about to start ringing. The call from Wisconsin comes within hours. Dr. Robert Walton, head of ABS's dairy cattle breeding program, wants answers. You can imagine the conversation, the numbers, the justification, the cold sweat on Ken Young's neck as he explains why he exceeded his authorization to secure a red calf, the very color the industry has dismissed for decades. But Young has Jean-Louis Schrago's vision backing him up. For years, Schrago has been pressing ABS to invest in red genetics, pointing to the growing European demand, the untapped market potential. And when Young tells Walton about the pedigree, a Telstar son out of the legendary Barb family, he's betting that Walton will see what he sees. And then Young delivers the line that will become legend. It was easier to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. Walton isn't pleased, not at first, but the purchase is made, the papers are signed, and Triple Threat is loaded onto a trailer bound for the ABS facilities in DeForest, Wisconsin. What happens next will test everyone's faith in that $60,000 gamble. Within months of his arrival at ABS, something strange begins to happen. The vibrant red calf you saw in that sale ring starts to change. At first, it's subtle, a darkening around the edges, a deepening of shade that you might attribute to winter coat or lighting. But by 6 months after the sale, there's no denying it. By 9 months of age, Triple Threat has turned almost completely black, retaining only a few reddish hairs in his ears and tail switch. The black-red gene, inherited from Telstar, has expressed itself in the most confusing way possible. Your $60,000 Red Bull now looks like a black and white Holstein. Dr. Walton, as he'll later recall, is really upset with both Schrago and Young at this point. The whole premise of the purchase, elite genetics in a red package for the European market, seems to be unraveling before everyone's eyes. But here's what the skeptics don't understand yet. The color change is only superficial. Triple Threat's genetics remain unchanged. When bred to cows carrying the true recessive red gene, he will consistently produce red offspring. Approximately half of his red-coated offspring will exhibit the same darkening phenomenon, born red, turning black as they mature. The chameleon effect becomes a trademark, a visual signature of his lineage that breeders will learn to recognize across generations. And so the work begins. Semen collection, distribution, the slow process of proving a sire through his daughters. Triple Threat's physical challenges aren't done testing the faith of those who believed in him. You're about 5 years into Triple Threat's career at ABS when you notice him favoring his front leg. The lameness progresses. Within months, the verdict is clear. Permanent injury. The damage is severe enough that he can barely put weight on the limb. The bull who was supposed to change the breed can barely walk. For most animals, this would be the end. A 3-legged bull at a semen collection facility? The logistics alone seem impossible. The humane thing would be to retire him, to use what semen you've already collected and move on. But you watch him hobble into the collection room, and something remarkable happens. The moment his work begins, Triple Threat comes alive. His libido remains unimpaired. his seminal quality never wavers. Day after day, year after year, this three-legged bull produces semen with the best of them, a living advertisement for the constitutional vigor and will to live that he's passing to his daughters. And those daughters? They're starting to hit the ground across North America and Europe, and they're everything Schrago predicted, and more. In a world where type matters, where the physical structure of a cow determines her longevity, her productivity, her commercial value, Triple Threat's daughters are revelations. At a time when many red and white cattle lack the scale and refinement of their black and white counterparts, these daughters carry what breeders will call the elegant Hanover-Hill look. They're tall, long-necked, angular. Their mammary systems show exceptional texture and strong suspensory ligaments. Their feet and legs, the foundation that determines how long a cow can stay in the milking string, are outstanding. But it's not just type. Triple Threat's daughters are component specialists. In an era when many sires chase sheer milk volume, his daughters consistently produce milk with higher butterfat percentage, a trait inherited from both sides of his pedigree. In markets where milk is priced on components, this makes them exceptionally profitable. And there's something else, something harder to quantify, but impossible to ignore. Triple Threat's daughters don't just produce, they reproduce. They're fertile, they're durable, they stay in the herd year after year, calving without difficulty, bouncing back from setbacks, passing on their qualities to the next generation. He seldom sires a mediocre daughter, breeders will say. And as the proof accumulates, daughter after daughter, herd after herd, the skeptics begin to fall silent. Dr. Walton will later reflect on it with wonder. It was a remarkable story, and he was a most remarkable character. The three-legged bull from Hanover-Hill is proving to be worth every penny of that $60,000 gamble, and his best daughters? They're about to become legends in their own right. The true measure of a dairy sire isn't found in his own statistics. It's found in his daughters. And Triple Threat's daughters are about to rewrite the definition of what a red and white Holstein can be. Let's start with Nandette TT Speckle Red. She's a show cow, a force of nature in the ring. In 1981 and again in 1984, she's named All-American Red and White, the highest honor in the show world. When she walks into a ring, judges take notice. When she leaves, they remember. But Speckle's real legacy isn't her own championships, it's what she passes on. Her daughter, Stookie Elm Park Blackrose, will become grand champion at the Royal Winter Fair in 1995, one of the most prestigious cattle shows in the world. And the line continues. Blackrose to Lavender Ruby Redrose. Redrose to a cow who will become arguably the most influential red Holstein of the 21st century. KHW Regiment, Apple Red. They'll call her the $1 Million Cow. And when geneticists trace her pedigree back, they'll find Triple Threat as her great-great-grandsire. The three-legged bull's DNA, flowing through 4 generations of exceptional females, culminating in a cow who will reshape modern red Holstein breeding. But Speckle is just one branch of the dynasty. Consider Tora Triple Threat Lulu, classified EX96, gold medal dam, reserve grand champion at the Royal Winter Fair in 1981. A brood cow's brood cow, the kind of animal that produces excellence with almost monotonous consistency. Her most important contribution? A son named Hanover-Hill Inspiration. And here's where Triple Threat's legacy transcends the red and white population entirely. Inspiration will be used heavily in the mainstream black and white population. Through him, Triple Threat's genetics will permeate the entire breed, reaching herds that never explicitly sought red genetics, carried silently through generation after generation of elite cattle. The bull, who was dismissed as a genetic curiosity, is now influencing cattle that don't even carry his color. And then there's Hanover-Hill TT Roxette. If you know anything about Holstein breeding, you know the Roxy family. Founded by Glenridge Citation Roxy EX97, often considered the greatest brood cow in the history of the breed, the Roxys have dominated show rings and breeding programs for decades. Roxette is the bridge, the strategic conduit that introduces the red gene into that legendary lineage. Through her granddaughter, Golden Oaks Perk Ray Red, winner of the 2012 Holstein International Red Impact Award, Triple Threat's genetics merge with what many consider the greatest cow family in Holstein history. And for those who still believe that red cows can't compete on production, consider Cellcrest-T Roseanne Red. Her record, 40,340 pounds of milk, 4.7% butterfat, 1,880 pounds of fat. In an era when production skeptics dismiss red and whites as pretty but unproductive, Roseanne stands as living proof that Triple Threat's daughters can go toe-to-toe with the highest producing black and whites in the breed. 4 daughters, 4 branches of a dynasty that will reshape the breed for generations. But Triple Threat's impact doesn't stop at the Canadian border. Across the Atlantic, his genetics are about to revolutionize an entire continent. In Europe, Triple Threat's genetics arrive like a thunderclap. For centuries, European dairy farmers have relied on traditional breeds: the Simmental in Switzerland, the Red Pied in Germany, the MRY in Holland. These are dual-purpose animals, bred for both milk and meat, and they've served their farmers well. But the economics are changing. Specialization is the future, and farmers who want to stay competitive need cattle that can produce at levels their traditional breeds simply can't match. They need Holsteinization, the systematic infusion of North American Holstein genetics into their native populations. And for those who want to maintain the red color that their markets prefer, the color that consumers associate with quality, with tradition, with trust, they need Triple Threat. His semen flows into Switzerland, France, Germany, Holland. Farmers who've never heard of Hanover-Hill, who couldn't find Wisconsin on a map, are suddenly breeding their best cows to a 3-legged bull from upstate New York. And the results are transformative. It's 1979. You're standing in the USA Pavilion at the Paris Agriculture Show, and you're witnessing the culmination of Jean-Louis Schrago's decade-long mission to promote red Holstein genetics in Europe. Around you stand 4 of Triple Threat's finest Swiss daughters, including Gweck's Triple Tulip Red. Tulip is a cow unlike almost any other. In Switzerland, she's achieved a classification score of EX98, a nearly unprecedented feat. Only one other cow in Swiss history has ever reached that summit. And she's standing right in front of you, proof that Triple Threat's genetics can produce type that rivals the best black and whites in the world. The European breeders are transfixed. The quality is undeniable. These daughters prove everything Schrago has been saying for years. But something else is happening at this show. Something you won't understand until weeks later, when the horror of it becomes clear. French veterinarians, suspicious of this new dairy breed being promoted so aggressively, make a decision that will haunt the Red Holstein movement for years. The 4 Swiss cows are intentionally infected with IBR, infectious bovine rhinotracheitis. When Schrago returns to Switzerland, a country that maintains IBR-free status, he receives devastating news. Swiss authorities demand immediate slaughter of all 4 animals to protect the national herd. 3 of them are killed within days. But Tulip, the EX98 cow, the living proof of Triple Threat's transformative power, Schrago refuses to let her die. He makes desperate phone calls in every favor he's built over a decade in the business. And then salvation arrives in the form of Anton van Nieuwenhuizen, a Dutch breeder who was so impressed by Tulipe at the Paris show that he's willing to buy her, infected or not, and bring her to Holland, where IBR regulations are different. Tulip crosses the border into Holland. She survives the disease. And for the next several years, until she dies at the remarkable age of 15, she serves as a living advertisement for the Triple Threat bloodline across Europe, producing offspring, winning admirers, proving that the Red Holsteins from North America represent the future of European dairy breeding. The tragedy at Paris doesn't stop the revolution. It only delays it. In France, Triple Threat establishes the foundational Ooze EX96 and Rolls EX96 cow families. Both become national champions. Both found dynasties that remain prominent in European breeding decades later. In Germany, his genetics accelerate the evolution of the traditional German Red Pied into the modern, high-producing German Red Holstein. The utter quality and angularity needed to transform dual-purpose animals into elite dairy machines come directly from that 3-legged bull in Wisconsin. In Holland, Van Nieuwenhuizen's rescue of Tulip sparks one of the most ambitious Red Holstein crossing programs in Europe, transforming the traditional MRY breed with genetics traced directly back to Triple Threat. The European invasion is complete. A bull who was dismissed as a genetic defect in 1972 has become the primary engine of continental transformation. Triple Threat dies in 1982. He's approximately 10 years old. His body has finally surrendered to the accumulated toll of years spent working on 3 legs, the strain on his remaining limbs, the constant effort of simply staying upright. But the semen collected over a decade of service will continue working for years to come. And his genetic legacy? It's already immortal. When the final numbers are tallied, Triple Threat will be proven on over 18,000 daughters in more than 6,000 herds. Numbers that would be impressive for any sire. For a bull purchased as an experiment in a color the industry had rejected for generations, they're extraordinary. The men who made it possible will go on to build on what they started. Jean-Louis Schrago, the Swiss visionary who was told there was no market for red genetics, is hired by ABS as European manager shortly after the Triple Threat purchase. Vindication for years of persistence. He spends a decade developing semen sales across Europe before founding his own company, ABC Genetics, in 1984. Ken Young's rogue bid becomes the stuff of industry legend, a case study in trusting your instincts when conventional wisdom says you're wrong. Dr. Robert Walton, who was not too pleased at the time of the purchase, later acknowledges that it was probably one of the best investments ABS ever made. Schrago and Young were forgiven many times over the years, Walton will reflect. Peter Heffring continues building Hanover-Hill into a global powerhouse. The farm that produced Triple Threat will go on to produce generations of influential cattle, but few will match the 3-legged bull's impact on breed history. And the prejudice against red genetics, it doesn't disappear overnight. But Triple Threat's daughters, and their daughters after them, make it increasingly difficult to maintain. How do you dismiss a color as defective when cows wearing that color are winning championships, setting production records, founding dynasties? You can't. If you're standing in a modern dairy barn today, running your hands over the top line of a red and white Holstein with exceptional type and high butterfat components, you're touching Triple Threat's legacy. If you're reviewing genomic proofs and see the Ranger Red lineage dominating the rankings, bulls like 3-star O Ranger Red and Hugerhorse DGO Rubles Red carrying Triple Threat's genetics multiple times in their pedigrees, you're seeing his DNA still moving the needle on profitability 5 decades after his birth. The numbers tell part of the story, but the deeper legacy lives in names every Holstein breeder knows. KHW Regiment Apple Red, the $1 million cow, traces directly back through Speckle to Triple Threat. The Roxy family, widely considered the greatest cow family in Holstein history, carries his red gene through Roxette. Hanover-Hill inspiration, used heavily in black and white populations worldwide, came from his daughter Lulu. Think about what that means. Triple Threat's genetics didn't just elevate the red and white population. They permeated the entire mainstream breed, reaching herds that never explicitly sought red genetics, carried silently through generation after generation of elite cattle. The story of Hanover-Hill Triple Threat-Red is at its heart a story about vision, about seeing potential where others see only defects, about having the patience to let the market catch up with your understanding of value. Jean-Louis Schrago saw the future of European dairy farming in a color that North American breeders dismissed. Ken Young saw a genetic opportunity that justified breaking the rules. Dr. Walton saw that sometimes forgiveness is more valuable than permission. And Triple Threat himself? He saw, or perhaps simply embodied, the resilience that would become his greatest legacy. A bull who changed color, but not genetics. A bull who lost a leg, but not his purpose. A bull who faced every obstacle the industry could throw at him and kept producing excellence anyway. Barn door opening, morning light. So the next time you're walking your barn at dawn, checking on a fresh heifer with that elegant frame and correct feet and legs, ask yourself, where did these genetics come from? Trace the pedigree back far enough, and you may find yourself standing in a crowded sale barn in 1972. Watching a man bet his career on a red calf the world called a defect. Witnessing the moment when everything the industry believed about color and value was challenged by a single falling gavel. You may find yourself standing in the presence of Triple Threat, the three-legged bull who changed the color of a breed forever. Some animals are born into a world that's ready for them. Others have to change the world to make room for what they carry inside. Triple Threat was born into prejudice. He lived through skepticism, he worked through disability, and he left behind a legacy that touches virtually every red and white Holstein walking the earth today. Not bad for a genetic defect.
And that's the story of Hanover-Hill Triple Threat-Red, the three-legged bull who changed the color of a breed forever. Thank you for spending this time with us on the Bullvine podcast. If this episode resonated with you, if it made you think differently about the genetics in your own herd, or reminded you why you got into this business in the first place, we'd love to hear from you. Share this episode with a fellow breeder. Leave us a review, and visit thebullvine.com for more stories, insights, and analysis from the front lines of dairy genetics, because every cow has a pedigree, but the great ones, they have a story. Until next time, keep breeding forward. This has been the Bullvine Podcast. Thanks for listening.
This is the Bullvine. Turn the volume high for the icons of the ages that never will die. From the show ring thunder to the quiet strength they knew. Hear their stories now, coming right on through. Oh, tell the tale, the Bullvine. Legends live here.